Hey, welcome to lesson 2 in this 5-lesson series called The Basics. We're going to tie a partridge and orange. I've got a size 14 wet fly hook, some 6/0 orange unithread, hare's mask, and a partridge feather. So let's get started with tying right behind the eye of the hook. Grab our scissors, trim our waist. Fly was originally tied with silk, not something I typically use. In addition, I like tying with just the thread because you can coat the thread, which makes your fly quite a bit more durable when it ends up in a toothy fish's mouth. I'm going to run my thread to just behind the point of the hook, and then we'll just run it back forward. We'll stop about 2/3 of the way from our tie-in point. Now you want to try to keep touching wraps here, and you can hear my thread. The reason you can hear it is because I keep really good thread tension when I tie. I want my wraps to be nice and tight, and I'm taking my time and just going slow. We'll stop right about there. Now, as I said, I like to coat this. So I've got some head cement here, and I scrape as much of it off as I can and just have a really small amount on the brush. Just lightly coat this. It's fine if you want to put a heavy coating on there, just have to give it a little bit more time to dry. So while we're waiting for that to dry, I'll come over to my hare's mask and introduce this material to you if you're not familiar with it. This is a hare's mask. It's got two fibers that we're really concerned with, which is the under fur, which is nice and soft, and then we've got some guard hairs, which are a bit more spiky. And they give you a little bit different effect. I'm going to pick out a little bit of both. For really sparse and small bulbous thorax. And so this is less than a pea, quite a bit less than a pea, which might look like a lot in the camera, but it's definitely not. You want this to be really sparse. Fibers got ahead of themselves. So we'll just pick off small amounts and dump them onto our thread. Really tight noodle. And that should be plenty right there. Just make a couple wraps. Create a little round ball. That's it. Is that 3 or 4 wraps? Come over to my partridge feather, which is unprepped at this point. All we're going to do is come over and pull these soft, fluffy fibers off the back of the feather, both sides. So we'll have this nice naked main stem. Don't need that. Now, as much as it pains me, because these feathers are just beautiful, I'm going to continue to pull these fibers toward the rear till I get the amount of the feather that I actually want to use, which is just this small part here. So I'm going to remove these fibers. I'm going to put them aside. I'm not going to throw them away. Use them for legs for something else. Just pull these off. Of course, you want to do all this really gently because this feather's fairly delicate. Now we've got something of an emaciated feather here, but we don't want this to be a big heavy collar, so we're just going to coax these fibers to the rear again, like so. And we're going to expose this tip. Okay, we're just going to lay this over the top of the shank of the hook and make one wrap over the top of that main stem, just to make sure it's where we want it, and it is. So I'm going to put a couple more wraps down just to secure that feather in there. Now this main stem is pretty delicate, so I'm going to flip this tip back, and that's just going to give us a slightly more trustworthy tie-in point, because that main stem will break pretty easily. The feather's definitely still delicate, so you need to be careful in general, but flipping that tip back is worth the extra second or two. Now this naked main stem is a little bit long. I'm going to trim a bit of that off. Take my hackle pliers and attach it to the butt end of that main stem. Lift it up vertically. And we're just going to try to coax these fibers toward the rear, and sometimes they are more cooperative than others, but they will get the general idea. And we're just going to wrap this feather, one wrap in front of the other, with our hackle pliers, like so. And then we'll bring this feather back around to the top. Now ideally that would be it, and I would be there. I might be able to get away with it. You want to be at the naked part of your stem, ideally. Put one wrap of thread over that. A little bit sloppy because I got the camera in front of me here. Cramps my workspace, but you get the idea. And I'm going to let go of that main stem with my hackle pliers, like so. I'm just going to tighten those wraps down. Put a couple wraps in front. Now at this point you can either pull or snip this fiber out. I'm going to use my scissors and come in here and just give it a little snip. Get rid of that. The fly is pretty much done at this point. This is purely personal preference. Most insects have a darker head. I don't like the orange head for that reason. So I just take a black marker and try not to hit my feather while I coat this head. And then I'm going to coat this thread that we'll whip finish with in some black permanent marker. Give it a moment or two to dry after you do it. Otherwise it's a bit sticky. Take my whip finish tool, come in, make sure those legs are behind our knot. Then we can remove our thread. And just to finish the fly, I'm going to put a little head cement on that head. Again, want to make sure you avoid your feather, so I'm just going to take the brush and go right over that eye of the hook, not worry about it. I'll come in with a pin and clear that eye so I don't have to deal with it when I'm on the water, which will make me a little grumpy. Take a pin, just clear that eye, like so. Now that tip of the pin has some head cement on it, so I like to just wipe that off and then go back in one more time just to make sure. Clear that head. That also makes sure that if any more head cement as it's drying does slip back into that eye, you've addressed it. Alright, so there's a Partridge and Orange. Should be tied really sparse as you see it. Don't want a big heavy collar. Couple wraps. That's about it. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope it's a fly that you put in your box and go fish and have some success with. So thanks a lot, and I will see you in the next lesson.